I'm sure it's a fairly common experience that you might think about doing something or have some plan or other that sounds like it might be fun, but then you decide not to do it. And then later on, you regret your choice and you wish that you had actually done whatever this thing was that you were thinking about. Maybe some friends invite you out to dinner, nice restaurant, but you got a conflict on your calendar, and so you turn them down. And then the next day you're talking to them, and they had a great time, great conversation, great food, and you're going, oh, I wish I'd gone with you guys. You had a much better time than I did last night. Or maybe there's a concert or an event or a show or some sort of something going on that you think about doing, but it's a long week, and you know you're going to be tired, so you decide to just stay at home. And the next day, you read the reviews and the news, and you just kick yourself and go, how on earth, why did I miss this? Instead of just sitting around watching television, this would have been a whole lot more fun. That kind of regret, I think, happens a lot. There were 5,000 men who went out that day to the desert to hear Jesus. That doesn't count the women and children, so if you throw them in, probably a good 10, 12, maybe 15,000 people, which was a big crowd. Even today's standards, that's a big crowd of people. But it's by no means everybody. There were plenty of other people who lived in that area who probably thought about going out to follow Jesus into the desert, but then decided not to. And you can bet they went through exactly the same thing we just talked about. The next day, when they heard about what happened, when they heard about the miracle, they just kicked themselves and said, how on earth could we have missed this? Why didn't we go out into the desert in order to see this? Because now we've missed this miracle. Because they had good reasons. They had really good reasons why they couldn't go out into the desert that day. I know Frank, he had a tee time at Kearney Hills Golf Course, and so he couldn't go out there. See, there's a golf scramble coming up. Really important, a really good charity, and his buddies were planning on him to make those really accurate shots that would allow them to win the scramble, so he needed to get out to the golf course to do some practicing. So he couldn't make it. And then there's Martha. You know Martha, always busy, always worried about many things. She had company coming in, so she had to clean up the house and whip up some potato salad, and of course a batch of her really famous deviled eggs, so there's no way she could make it out to the desert. Jennifer had to study for a test. She could have studied last weekend, but last weekend was girls' weekend, and that kind of blew the time, and now she's under the gun, so there's no way she can go out to the desert. Come to think of it, actually, I wasn't able to go out to the desert to Jesus that day either. I was really busy. See, I had this sermon to prepare. I had to work on this sermon. I had a great sermon at the beginning of the week, and then I met with a bunch of parishioners on Thursday nights, and they gave me a great idea for this sermon. So I scrapped what I had and started all over again. So there's no way I could go out into the desert with Jesus that day. We all have our reasons for not going out into the desert. I think good reasons. They're all solid. They're all cast iron reasons. They're all very worthy reasons. But I think they all boil down to just one reason. And that reason is that we're just kind of comfortable. We're comfortable where we are. Life sort of muddles along, and we're pretty comfortable and we're pretty happy with things we're doing. Don't want to risk it. Don't want to take any chances. Don't want to make any leap into the dark, do something crazy. So we stay at home because we're comfortable at home. I mean, not that everything's comfortable, of course. Life's difficult. There's lots of stuff going on. There's bills to pay, all the financial strain that goes along with that and the worry. And there's all the advancement and the accomplishments we have to do, advancing ourselves, climbing the ladder socially and at work, and all the anxiety and stress that goes along with that. And there's sickness, and there's illness, and there's disease, and there's even death. And that also comes into it. And all those things can sort of make us start to think that maybe we're not quite so comfortable, and maybe think about what are the important things in life? What are the really big questions? Questions about why we're here, where we're going, what we're supposed to be at now. But usually we manage to paper over those questions with lots of entertainments and diversions and excitements and distractions, so we don't have to think about them. And that way we can keep our comfortable lives going. or at least our pretend comfortable lives. At least we're not as uncomfortable that we're willing to do something about it. But what if we were? What if we allowed that discomfort to get into us? What if we stopped medicating the emptiness that we have inside of us with diversions and entertainments and distractions? What if we confronted the really hard questions, the things that are brought up by the pain and the emptiness and the suffering of life, the diseases and the challenges, the financial crises, the personal disasters that happen to us, the relationships that fall apart, the divorces, the stage 4 cancers? What if we allowed all that stuff to come into us instead of trying to pretend that it doesn't exist? What if we confronted all that and asked the really hard questions about what we're supposed to do, what we ought to do, instead of just the diversions that we want to do? What if we confronted the fact that we're really not as comfortable at all as we pretend that we are? See, the 5,000 men and their wives and children who went out to the desert that day, they didn't go out there because they were comfortable. Exactly the opposite. They went out because they knew they weren't comfortable. They knew that they needed consolation and they needed some sort of peace. They knew that life can't be solved with golf scores and soccer tournaments and test exam results and even the world's best deviled eggs, that they can't possibly fill the emptiness that's inside of us. And because they knew that, they were willing to risk it all and go out into the desert. And what did they find when they went out into the desert? They found a Jesus that they didn't have to pretend with anymore. They found a Jesus who knew what they were going through, who knew the emptiness, who knew the suffering, who knew the doubts and the fears and the anxiety of their lives, who knew it from the inside and told them that it was okay for them to be honest with him. See, back in chapter 5 of Matthew's gospel, he had told them the words of comfort and consolation that they needed to hear. He told them, "Blessed are you who are poor. Blessed are you who are meek. Blessed are you who are mourning. Blessed are you who are hungry." They went out to the desert that day, and they found out that everything he said was true. They found the fulfillment and the consolation that all the entertainments and the diversions couldn't possibly give them. What happened? First, it says he looked on them with pity and mercy. He looked on them with pity and mercy and love to fill up the emptiness that all the diversions and distractions couldn't possibly do. And then what happened? It says he cured their illnesses. He cured their sickness. He got them back on their feet. He brushed them out. He gave them courage, and he gave them a fresh start again. And what else did he do after that? He fed them. He fed the emptiness inside of them that had been gnawing at them and giving them that hunger, and he fed them in abundance. He completely filled and satisfied them. And there were 12 wicker baskets left over, which would have been more than enough for all the people who didn't come to the desert that day, for all the people who stayed down. If they had gone out to the desert, they would have had enough. If we had gone out into the desert that day to meet Jesus, there would have been an abundance for us as well. But we stayed at home. We stayed at home because we weren't willing to risk it, because we wanted to keep pretending ourselves that we were satisfied and comfortable. Think the words of the prophet Isaiah. 6 centuries before Jesus are still talking to us today in the 21st century. Why spend your money for what is not bread, your wages for what fails to satisfy? Heed me, and you shall eat well, and you shall delight in rich fare. Jesus is still out in the desert, still inviting us, still waiting us. He's saying, why are you going to spend your wages and your money, your time, your attention? Why are you spending your lives on things that don't satisfy the hunger that's deep inside of you? He asks us, when will you give up the pretense and come out into the desert with me? Because I will satisfy you. I will give you what you really hunger for. I will fill you completely with my consolation and my truth and my love. All we got to do is get up and go out to the desert. Risk it all. Come to me heedfully. Listen that you may have life. Or, as he said in chapter 10 of Matthew's Gospel, that we just heard a few weeks ago. Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened heavily, and I will give you rest.